All right, it is 12 o'clock noon on Webinar Wednesdays. We are going to get started here and kick this thing off. Thank you for tuning in to our Webinar Wednesday. This is part of a series that we offer with the Recycling Partnership. And we are going to be chatting today about communicating with your residents through outreach and events. And I'm stoked about this topic. It's actually one that came to us through all of you. It was a recommended topic. And I'm not the expert in this. Working with the Recycling Partnership, we often work through communities and don't have the opportunity for events and outreach. But I luckily have here with me today two experts in events and outreach. I have with me, I'll actually let them go ahead and introduce themselves, but I do have with me Shelby Lewis, who is the recycling coordinator with the City of Tampa, and Edgar Castrotello, who is the recycling specialist. And here in the City of Tampa, they host a whole slew of events, everything from the famous Gasparilla parades to the more quaint health and wellness fairs. And these two work all year long to really bring great, successful, well-executed outreach to their events. And so I'm very excited to have them share how they get that done and show you some really tactical steps that you can use to improve your own events and outreach. So before we get into that, I do want to just go through a few housekeeping items. We do like to make these webinars as interactive as possible. So please feel free to chat with one another throughout the webinar through the chat box, and also ask questions through the Q&A. I have with me today my team member, Miss Lily Schwartz. Lily, are you on the line?
Hello, yes I am.
Awesome. So Lily is here and will be fielding questions for us as they come in. So feel free to pop them in that Q&A box so that we can get them answered. And if we don't get them answered, the Q&A will record them for us and we will be able to follow up after the webinar to get that done. Well, for those of you who are not familiar with the Recycling Partnership, I'm going to take a moment and talk a little bit about our organization and a few resources that we have potentially use for your own events and outreach. So who are we? Who is the Recycling Partnership? We're a national nonprofit, and we work hand in hand with both corporations and communities who are aligned in their interest in improving the recycling system and transforming it for good. And why exactly do we do what we do? Well, we operate on the premise that currently less than half of recyclables in US homes are actually getting recycled. And so one, folks don't have the same access to recycling, and two, we're not capturing all of the tonnage that's out there and available to be captured and put back into the recycling system. So it is our goal at the Recycling Partnership to get that done. And the good part is we're doing it. So we've reached about 45% of the US population currently through our programs, through our resources, and through many of our community partners. And what does that mean? Well, it's 60 million households that have been impacted. It's most importantly a savings in natural resources, 465 million gallons of water and 250 metric tons of greenhouse gases have been avoided by the recycling improvements that we have made together with our partners as an organization. And so, you know, I think it's really important to look at why it is that we're all doing what we do. It's really easy to get lost in the nitty gritty of recycling and start focusing in on how crazy plastic bags drive us in our recycling system, and you know how much we want everyone to recycle every can and how we message that perfectly. But it's always great to look at the big picture and say, you know, why are we doing this? What is the real value here? And it is the case that we're saving resources, we're reducing greenhouse gases, and we're also improving economies. So there are so many great reasons why we are all doing the work that we do. So we thank you for joining us in that work by taking part in things like our webinars, by utilizing the resources that we have available to you, and by partnering with us to do great work in your community. Now, I mentioned that with the Recycling Partnership, we don't do a ton of a direct outreach and events, but we do have a few resources that can be applied to your own outreach and events. And so our campaign builder allows you to go in and create custom campaign pieces that have your community's accepted materials and non-accepted materials displayed right on them. You can also focus on some top issue items like the plastic bag pieces that you see here. Now, these are intended to, of course, be mailed as an in-home communications piece, but these are also great to have handy with you at your outreach events so that you can talk through these items with folks and that folks can take them home with them and hopefully pop them on their refrigerator and remember exactly what goes in that recycling bin. And if you haven't heard about our new signage, we now have DIY signs available to you. You can log in and create your account for DIY signs. And here you have the capability of creating signs with 3 different sizes. When I think about events, probably the 8.5 by 11 would be one of the most prominent ones to use at events. And this can be used for kind of a wayfinding and a explanation sign to say, you know, this is the material that you want to go in this bin. We have both icons available and we have illustrated graphics available for these signs. So if you haven't checked them out yet, I definitely recommend it. If you have an upcoming event that you need to put signage around everywhere for, here's a great tool to use to create that. We also have a game for some outreach that we have done and for a few community partners that we have who are directly doing outreach through campaigns we've partnered with them on. It's a magnetic game. You can see this adorable little peanut over here using the game that was at EarthX in Texas. It's a series of magnets, really. It's just a material mix, I should say, of magnets. And the idea is for folks to guess, you know, what is recyclable, what goes in the garbage, and, you know, what can you donate? And you can see everything's on there from needles to hoses and cans. So it's items that we often see in our recycling carts that we don't want in there. The really funny part about this is when we brought this out to trial it at EarthX, what we found is that a lot of people really loved the magnets and they thought they were a giveaway. So just a note on that, that, you know, those magnets can grow legs and walk off pretty easily. But we do have the artwork for this game available. So if you're interested, please do reach out. I'm happy to share the artwork with you and share with you some directions on how you can actually get this game made. All right, enough of me blabbering on now. As I said, I'm not the expert here, so I want to hand it over to those who are. I'll give you both an opportunity to introduce yourselves and then dig right into the great content that you have to share with everyone today. Again, please feel free to use the Q&A box throughout, and we will be taking pauses, taking questions. This is as interactive as we can make it. And with that being said, Lily, do we by chance have any questions at this time?
Not yet.
All right, well, thank you so much. Okay, so go ahead, take it away.
Thank you, Alita. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shelby Lewis, and like Alita mentioned, I'm a recycling coordinator for the city of Tampa.
And hi, everyone. This is Edgar Castro, and I'm the recycling specialist.
All right, so we are going to be talking to you all about some of the ways that we look at events, we prep events, and everything that goes into them from the start to the finish. So we'll be talking about display, giveaways, how to interact with people. We all know at events, it's a very brief moment that you have to give. So we have some good information of ways that have worked for us. Creativity. We also offer recycling services and consulting here for the city of Tampa. So not every municipality or county or local government or business will have both sides of the education and the operations, but we are unique. So we'll share some of the things that we do with both of those. And then we also have some event requirements and tips that we give out. So we're all working for the same goal with these events, and we want to give them as much as we can and also work with our residents while they're there. On the screen, you can see these are just a few of the events that we attend. So we have some pretty awesome opportunities to reach a lot of residents. Gasparilla, like Alita mentioned, is one of the big ones. If you haven't been, Gasparilla Parade is the most well-known, but there's Gasparilla almost everything. So the music festival and the Festival of the Arts are definitely some of the bigger ones. And Riverwalk Trick or Treat and Veg Fest are also up there. So the display, that's very important because that's going to be the first point of contact that you have with anybody attending the event. One thing that we like to focus on is our branding. Since we are a part of the city of Tampa, we want to not only make sure that everything's approved, but that it's all matching. So residents can come up to us during an event and see that it's the city of Tampa. This is who is picking up my recycling. This is the same logo on my recycling cart. I can trust that what the information they're giving us is going to be accurate. We also want to be clearly identifiable. We try and make it very obvious. And as you can see from these photos, I think we do a pretty good job. We kind of scream, hey, we're the city of Tampa's recycling. And we also scream that we want you to do it right. So people know from a distance what we're there to do. And anyone who is in the recycling industry knows that people are very opinionated one way or the other about recycling. So it's a pretty easy thing that attracts people to your tent, whether you get their attention or not. So it's kind of nice that the word recycle does a lot of the work for us. We also want people to be attracted to our booth as well. So it's eye-catching. So they know what we're talking about and then what's going to draw them in. So we're gonna have some items on our table. We're gonna have examples of our accepted items and then some of our serial offenders, like those plastic bags and the tanglers. You can see on the bottom left-hand side of the screen, we'll bring a tangler ad. We have a regional campaign with Hillsborough County, St. Pete, Pinellas County, and then ourselves, City of Tampa. And that was one of the regional campaigns that we did recently, and it's about keeping those tanglers out. So we put some tanglers there, we put some prohibited items there, just for people to see hands-on what it is that we want and what it is that we really don't want. Another thing that we have out is something that is definitely eye-catching. It's the biggest thing that you can see from afar, which you can see in each one of these pictures, is our banner. One cool thing about this is we're in the business of obviously being sustainable and having waste reduction. So this banner is pretty unique because it's not one of those roll out metal banners. It's actually made of bamboo and it almost does like a crisscross with a tripod on the bottom. So we hook in our banner and the recycling market changes. We all know that. So we're able to update this as is needed. And there's little cost to it and little waste to it. So it's kind of nice when the cost and the environmental side line up. Most businesses and government should be on board with doing something that's financially and environmentally responsible. Of course, we bring some informational items as well. So we have our recycling brochure for people to take away because we want people to have that to refer back to if they'd like. We bring information on some of our campaigns and programs that we're doing, just kind of sharing the message of what it is that we really want people to take away from our table. One last thing I want to mention about the banner is you'll notice we have the don't include things in your recycling at the top. This is different than what our brochure says. Our brochure says the items that are accepted at the top. And this is because we want in our brochure for people to focus on only what is accepted. But when we're at an event, we have that, 5-10 second window to really capture someone. So the big no's are more of what we're going for. We don't want people just to look at it and say, oh, I already know that I'm doing it right. They're able to see the top of this and say, oh my gosh, I still didn't know, even though it's advertised everywhere, that plastic bags are not allowed in your recycling. So we do find that a lot of times people see those and we can tell right away that they're confused or they're, oh my gosh, I was doing this wrong. And so it gives us that opportunity to kind of swoop in and talk to them about the issues with it and better ways to do things. So lastly, on our tables are the most popular things, which is our giveaways. We have a few different giveaways. Our most popular ones you can see in the picture on the left. So it is a reusable straw that comes with a cleaner. We have our reusable bamboo utensils that come with a bag, a reusable snack or sandwich bag, and then the reusable metal cup that you see there. So those are definitely the most popular. Giveaways, we want to share our message through our giveaways. We don't just want to have something on the table that's there for people to take because it was cheap and has our logo on it. We want it to mean something. We want it to remind people of our message. And these main ones really do that purpose so well. And we are very proud of our giveaways. People really want them. So not only are they appealing, but they're very practical. People really want them. Now, one thing I will say is because they are so great and people really want them, is we almost use them to our advantage. We make people talk to us. They have to earn these giveaways. They can't just come up and say, can I have a cup? We say, sure, you can have a cup. Do you recycle? And so we kind of hold them hostage there a little bit to try and make them learn so that they're getting something out of it and we're giving them some information with this awesome free item that they're gonna get. And Edgar has one really awesome story that he had it with an attendee on an event, so he's gonna tell you about that.
Yes, so as you can see on the picture on the bottom right with the happy resident, we usually do give out one promotional item per person that comes up to our booth, but this one resident with her grandma, they were so excited to talk to me about all of the things that they have been trying to change and take initiatives on at work or at home. And they were so excited that I decided to ask, like, can I give you all the items in this instance? Like, it was a great interaction. So I wanted to take a picture of them with their permissions so I could share their story a little bit. But those moments really do matter because they will share the information with who knows how many people. And that lasting impression is very, very important.
Thank you so much for bringing that up, Edgar. That is so true. I think that, you know, the real benefit in doing outreach at events is that it is long lasting. You know, when you tell someone face to face about the fact that they can't put plastic bags in their cart and that the reason is because it ends up tangling equipment and our workers are put at risk and also are spending valuable time, you know, detangling that, it really sticks with them. And so I think that events play such an important role in our communication with residents. And I cannot tell you how happy it makes me to see everything that you guys are doing for events. I mean, these promo items are so great. They, one, give you an opportunity to talk about items that wouldn't be recycled, right? So plastic forks, plastic straws, in most cases, plastic solo cups. These are things that can not go in your bin. So it's so great you guys are telling folks that and saying, you know, use this instead. What an awesome way to do it. And I just want to go back. This signage that you have is so key, and putting the items at the top that we know you guys know are going to catch people's attention, right? Someone's going to walk by and say, I didn't know I couldn't put those in. And now they're going to come talk to you. And just that little switch that you made with changing that up from your brochure really is key here. And so I think I want to make sure we emphasize sometimes it's just these small things that you can switch up that are making such a big difference. Now I'm going to just take a second. I do see we have some questions coming in. Is there any questions you want to share with us, Lily?
Yeah, so I think one that is of interest is asking about the overall contamination rate in Tampa.
Oh, interesting. I'm going to let these two answer that question.
So when it comes to events, we do have still a lot of way to go when it comes to contamination. There's a lot of education left to go on. But when it comes to a residential curbside recycling contamination, our number's not where we aim for it to be. We're up in the probably in the 25 to 30% contamination with our carts. And that's what we're getting so detailed about our information when we're out at events and we're trying to increase the outreach. So yes, not desirable, but also something that we can definitely highlight and that we can work on.
And it's getting more attention throughout social media, throughout the media in general, about contamination in the recycling market. So we're finding that a lot of people are coming up to us at events and they kind of have an idea of or a background of the issues that are happening. So we're noticing more people are being aware of it. We're trying to spread the message, and we do have some enforcement programs that we will be rolling out soon here that will also help the city really focus on contamination.
Ooh, that sounds very exciting. And we will definitely be looking for more to come on that. And as far as the 25 to 30%, don't feel bad. I think that that's definitely something we're seeing across the state and across the nation. So that's why these opportunities for outreach are so important. What I will ask, have you heard, since you guys have been doing so much great work, have you noticed maybe anecdotally as you're out there talking to residents at these events that more people are catching on?
I think I've popularly heard that by the time we talk about tanglers and plastic bags is already a no. They know about it and they know not to put it in the recycling, and then perhaps they have another outlet for it. But it's becoming more of some other items that are secondary. But people know about the plastic bags, but it's still about, are you actually following through with what you were taught?
Right. Is the behavior matching? Very interesting. Thanks for sharing. Any other questions you have, Lily?
Yeah, so there's a lot of interest in who manufactured or where you got the bamboo banner from, as well as your promotional items, what the costs around them were, where you found them, and I'm sure we can follow up with additional information if you don't have that available to you right now.
Yeah, I would say let's definitely follow up with additional information on those. I'm sure you guys don't have all the costs on the top of your head or who exactly you ordered from, but great questions. And City of Tampa folks, are you willing to share that with everyone after?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Yeah, they will happily share that information so folks can know where to order these great items.
All right, and then one last question is, does Tampa offer recycling at events? And then if so, are there any tips?
Sorry, Lily, we lost you just a little there. So does Tampa offer any recycling?
At events, and then if so, do you all have any tips? That might be something you're getting to later on.
Yes, I think they're actually going they're going to get into that. So great.
So yes, we do, and yes, we have some tips. So
awesome.
We'll share those too.
So we're going to move into it so that we can cover some of those tips.
Right. So this next part, it's about environmental interpreting. And once you have your setup and you have your materials and you have your brochures and literature, environmental interpreting is something that is near and dear to my heart. So right off the bat, I want to clarify what environmental education is as opposed to environmental interpretation. So if you're in a classroom and you have people who are ready to learn and pay attention, that's an education setting. You have formal control over that classroom, or maybe a forum or some kind of meeting. But in a public event, it's really fast paced, and that's when you're environmental interpreting. You're trying to have a group that's non-captive. They are there by choice, and you have to really kind of prioritize what messaging you're giving out, because you may have an interaction that's 30 seconds, or if you're lucky, 5 minutes, which would be nice. But when you have that limited amount of time, you have to be very precise and try to get your standard messaging in. So if there's any key facts or contaminants that you want to focus on, make sure that anybody who's on your team that's at the tent is aware that that's your focus for that day or for that month, depending on the number of events. So like Shelby had mentioned before, there is a great importance of having the resources at hand. So having those items that people can hold on to, plastic bags, of course. So we usually say that if there's anything that you can wrap around your arm, may it be textiles or plastic bags or ropes, if you can wrap it around your arm, it's going to wrap around the machinery, and it's going to be a hassle later on to continue recycling. So having those hands-on things is really important. You're also a mediator between the technical world of recycling and that resident or that person that's trying to get some more information. So when you're interpreting, you are literally interpreting the technical terms so that they can understand it and grasp those ideas. If you just hand a brochure to them and say, make sure that you look at everything that's in there, then that connection wasn't made. That interaction fizzled a little bit, and they may forget about it. They'll put it in their reusable bag, which they probably got at another tent, and they may just get home and they'll forget about it. But if you start to use some complicated terms, you may also lose them. So define those things for them. If you're using MRF, define what a MRF is. If you're saying contamination, define that as well. You know, watch what you're saying and make sure that you're really connecting with them. And you can enhance this, of course, with the objects, but also if you have any experiences that you can share with them. If they're sharing some kind of insecurity about, oh, I don't know what to do with this when I'm at home, and you know, I've wondered for so long, make them feel that that is relatable, that they're not alone, that, you know what, that is a great question. It is confusing sometimes. There's so many things that are packaged in different ways. And I've experienced that myself, but here, let me help you. And I'll explain to you how you can recycle this or how you cannot recycle this. And of course, with the signs and the brochures, make sure it's colorful, that it catches attention, and that it can deliver your message really well. And then the last point here is make them make a relevant connection to the subject. If you're talking about something and they're really not catching on to the idea, read your audience. And this is where interpreting really comes in help and handy, is you have to be attentive to what their body language is saying, as well as to what your body language is saying. Have a smile on your face. Make sure that if you're out there to deliver the message, that you are prepared. If you are able to stand and be ready to welcome any guests who are walking by. Just like Shelby was saying, sometimes the banner will get people kind of scratching their head for a little bit. And that's our moment to go up to them and ask, like, hey, do you have any questions? You look a little bit confused. We can certainly kind of grab that moment. And so Shelby and I like to ask, every time we do outreach, we like to ask, who here throws something away every day? And everyone should say yes or raise their hand, depending on the setting. So all of those little things make a huge impact on in the interaction. It raises it from a level 0 to a 10. And it really sets you apart from what other people might be saying. And all of this, of course, you could match it with some activities, just like Alita showed with the magnets, which is a great activity and something that might not take too much space. Here on the screen, you might see Jason Milton, who's one of our recycling drivers, actually. He has a sorting game, and either goes in the garbage or in the recycling. So there's all kinds of games and activities, and you just have to be creative with it.
Wow, thank you for all that insight, Edgar. I mean, so smart, but really so true. I mean, educating and interpreting are two different things when you put it that way. And we have to be prepared to interpret when we're out there, and we're going to have a slew of people coming up to us. As we all know, working in this industry, we are the industry of acronyms. And sometimes we can quickly start to use those acronyms when we're talking to people, because we might be used to presenting at professional conferences or talking to folks within the industry. And we have to switch that mindset when we're actually going to be having that direct communication with residents. So really appreciate all of that insight.
All right, so continuing on the topic of creativity. So you may get the opportunity to go to events that don't necessarily match your theme of recycling or eco-friendly activities. But if you have the opportunity to go to an event where there's going to be thousands of people congregated, take that chance and show up. And you'll never know what attention you'll grab. So Bag Monster on this page is a huge attention grab. People can't help but take pictures of Bag Monster, and I intended to make a sign that has a hashtag for it, because then people can post it and hashtag and really get it trending. But Bag Monster gets that attention no matter what kind of event it is. And I use a sign to get my message across. So even if I don't have the time to speak to every single person in the parade, they're gonna get a message. And I told them, read my sign. That's all I have to say. and it's a really great opportunity to have a laugh, but also send that education across when in that moment. So that's where creativity comes in. You have to sometimes think outside of the box and think about, how can I make this event work in our favor to get that education and interpretation out, especially when people really only have like maybe 10 seconds to look at you. So if you have something that drags that attention, great. If not, it could be another event, like at the bottom right, there's a picture of some kids doing a low waste craft activity that we had at one of our art festivals. So it was an art festival, but it's a city event, and we had a tent there, and we wanted to have an activity with kids. But it's low waste because it's these little pieces of wood and just stamping on the wood and paint markers. So it could be something that they could take home. But while the kids are there doing a craft, we usually would pull the parents aside for a little bit, and then we take that time to really insert and introduce that information. So if you get the chance, that would be a great opportunity to incorporate your theme. Now, one last thing about Bag Monster. Up on the top left is a picture of Recycle Girl and Bag Monster at one of the city's events called Riverwalk Trick or Treat. And that's a Halloween event. And we made it work. We had our tent. There was a lot of kids, a lot of parents, but Bag Monster for sure had a sign, making sure that everybody could read it.
That's awesome, Edgar. I love Bag Monster, and I love the idea that you brought up of making him ultra social, because now you're out at your events, you're doing outreach, but by having a social element where people are going to want to take a photo with you and they're going to put that out there for other folks to see, and having a sign with a message on it, you're kind of hitting, two, I don't want to call them birds, but anyways.
Animal friendly.
Yeah, we're animal friendly, but anyways, you're multitasking, So I think that that's really, again, it's a smart idea.
And I do want to say, we just did Riverwalk Trick or Treat last weekend, and we had a little boy come dressed up as a garbage man with his little City of Tampa small garbage carts.
Oh,
and
that's
so
adorable.
It was the cutest thing to be there with Bag Monster. I got a picture with Bag Monster. So
and that went out on social media.
Yeah.
So the message is getting spread both ways.
Yeah, we hashtagged it. Okay, so this is the operations side of things. So I'll spend some time just telling you guys about what we offer the events here in the city and some of our requirements that we're doing. We will offer services. So services will be recycling frame rentals. Our department also offers garbage boxes and things like that. So we do cover both, but for the sake of this webinar, I'll just focus on our recycling services that we offer. So we have the frames that you can see to the left, and then they have clear bags. We'll tell people where to put their containers. We'll go over lots of different things. If somebody doesn't want our operations, but they want some consulting or they want some ideas of how to better their event in the waste reduction sense, we're happy to help. It doesn't matter if they ask the city to be in the operation side. We are all here for the same goal. We want all of the events in our city to look at their waste stream and see where they can reduce. So we are happy to help in either way, whether it's consulting or just the operation side of things. When they do request our operations, there are things that we're able to put in place to make sure that we kind of have a hold on the recycling and that we know what's going to be going in. We have better options for letting them know how to communicate to their attendees on which way is going to make that their recycling the best with the least amount of contamination. So with that, we give them an event requirements and recommendations guide. And this is new for the city, but it's something that we're really excited about because it kind of puts everything that we know as the recycling subject matter experts onto a piece of paper to give an event coordinator the ideas and things that they might not think of. So one of them, like I mentioned in the previous slide, is placement guidelines. That is so important to make sure, whether you're at an event or in an office space or really anywhere you have a recycling bin, there should be a garbage can next to it. It should never be by itself because especially at events, people are looking for the most convenient way to dispose of whatever it is they have. So it always must be next to a trash can. Quality control is something that everyone is really focused on at this point. We all know contamination is such a big deal and events are really hard to get people to recycle right. So quality control is something we talk about. We ask them to teach their volunteers and their staff at these events to make sure that they know what is recyclable so that they can be an extension of the education at the event. And if we have staff on site, it's a lot easier for us because we know those staff members know exactly what can be recycled. They're there to help. They're there to educate people at the event. We also ask them to have a vendor waste guide, which I'll show you on the next slide. I'll get in more detail on that. Waste education stations are something we recommend. So that's just simply having someone there, whether it's a staff member of the event or a volunteer, just to be there for people at the moment of disposal. So do they know where that item is supposed to go? And if they don't, then they don't have to guess because like we say, if it's a guess, it's a mess in recycling. So having that person there to guide them really cuts down on any contamination that you'll see, especially if your event has composting as well. And then we also recommend that they get waste diversion metrics. It is more popular for sustainability. It's just in right now. People want sustainable events. They want to support something that they feel is good or better for the environment. So telling them to maybe donate their food to a food pantry that's left over, do composting, do recycling, and get these metrics so that they can brag about how their event is low waste. And then of course, you know, we look at these events, so maybe a race where all that's produced is cups, little paper cups, and those aren't recyclable. So those types of things, we won't be having our operations at every single event, but again, we will consult with them to help them on anything that they need from us.
This is great. Again, you know, getting in on the front end. So knowing if we go to this event for recycling service, are we going to have, you know, are you going to be able to actually collect material there that's recyclable, working with, sounds like you guys are working with your vendors in advance to ensure that either the material is there, and if it's not, you know, the service isn't there. And it's not as easy as you mentioned, it's not as easy as just putting bins out there for collection. There's so many other pieces. I do see we have some questions, folks asking about signage, and I think you guys might even be showing some great examples of that. So we will move into the signage and other examples that you have.
So here is some signage. Obviously at events, you're not going to be able to have somebody at every single, I mean, that would be a dream come true to have an educator at every single station where there's recycling, garbage, potentially composting, depending on the event. So you do have to have signage. And a lot of times we focus on signage at the point of disposal, which is definitely important. And you can see a couple of examples on the left side of the screen here that we have. Boom by the Bay was an event that was held last July 4th. It was an event from the mayor. It was highly attended, and they knew that there were going to be lots of bottles, cans, and paper. So this was signage that was clearly Understood. People could see this is all they want: empty bottles, empty cans, dry clean paper. So it gave you a very easy idea of what you should be recycling. The one below is Gasparilla Music Festival. They did add composting in. It's not something that the city currently offers on the operational side. So they did bring in a third party to offer that, which is amazing. And you can see, again, there's images as well as words. So, you know, you want people to be able to just look at a picture. Not many people these days read too much, so pictures are always great to have just to capture that attention if they're not looking to really read into it. But you can see they have what's accepted for composting, what's accepted for recycling, and then on the far end it says everything else. So that encompasses everything, which I just think is really a great idea to use that terminology. And then lastly, we have our vendor waste guide, which you can see on the right side of the screen. And that guide is something very simple. We made it very simplistic. It's not as fancy as the other two signs that you're going to see. And this is because we're going to ask our vendors to create this waste guide and put it on some part of either their food truck or their booth, wherever they can, that people coming up to their table or their food truck will easily see it. This idea is brought on to basically plant the seed of where these items that they're about to get handed go, so that they're not waiting to kind of guess when they get to the recycle bin or the garbage, that they know from the moment they are given those items. And one thing that I think is kind of cool with food trucks is, you know, it takes a little bit of time to get your food. So you're waiting, you're looking at your phone, you're kind of bored. So it's something to look at and something to keep you busy, and it's also informational and educational, so you'll be prepared where to put your items when you're done with them.
Now, I love the signage that you have there at the Gasparilla Music Festival. Everything else makes sense, right? So if it's not one of these items we're showing you for compost, if it's not what we're showing you for recycling, it's something else. So put it in here. That's really lovely. I do want to just pause for a second and see if we have any other questions coming in. Lily, is there anything that you have?
Yes. There was one question asking about, have you had success enrolling volunteers to staff your events? If so, how do you train them? And are there volunteer assignments beyond the tent and the table?
So one thing, we do have a lot of people who would like to volunteer and come and do events with us that work with us in our department. Outside of that, we don't have too much of a volunteer reach at events. It's typically staff members with our department, but we are going to offer, this is something new that's coming up too, but we are going to offer training to all of our staff members, because when we need people to go to the event, we want to feel confident that they're confident in themselves and know exactly what they need to say. Some people give you some hard-hitting questions, and of course it's okay to not know every answer, but we want them to be as prepared as possible. So we're going to provide training for any staff that are interested in helping us at events. Any of the operations side of things, they'll already be on the recycling team on the operations side of things. So they know exactly what to put in the recycling bin and what to avoid. So we already know that they know how to answer any of those questions. And so sometimes events will hire on our staff to help with staging of the recycling bins, monitoring of the recycle bins. So if they are there, they can certainly educate the attendee when they're standing there.
And then to add on to that, there have been a couple of events in the city of Tampa that we have provided training for when it comes to recycling, like the NCAA Women's Final Four was one of the ones earlier this year that we provided training for a lot of their volunteers who were going to be working at the arena during the basketball games. And so we were that education facilitation in a way. So we provided consultation as to where they should be standing and what information they might be giving out. Because it was held in the city and there were a lot of events throughout the city that all connected. So we provided that, but sometimes the organizations will have volunteers and we can help out with that.
So really it was kind of happening through partnership. And, you know, you mentioned the women's basketball tournament that was here, and I think you guys, City of Tampa, might be having the Super Bowl come through, right, as well. So I'm sure you are brainstorming on all sorts of great ideas that you might have for that big and exciting event. We have another question about whether or not you charge event organizers for the frame rentals and the service.
So we do. The way that the frame rentals are charged is a refundable deposit. So they're able to do that charge and then get that back post event. But any services that we offer, as far as employee time, it's typically almost all overtime, these people who are coming out, because you know, if they're on the operational side, usually they're driving a recycling truck or a garbage truck or something to that effect. So they have their regular week job and then they'll be working overtime at these events. So we do charge for employee services, and then we have that refundable deposit for their recycling bin.
Any other questions you have, Lily, that you want to make sure we get to?
Yeah, this is a little bit of a general question, but what types of challenges, if any, have you met from the public regarding your recycling education, whether it's at these events or the booths?
I think one of the challenges is now we are no longer naming our requirements as tips. We are saying that there are certain things that are requirements, and it'll hit them a little bit as a little bit of a blow, like, oh, I've been doing this for so long, and then now we're saying, well, now it's required that you have to do it this way, otherwise it might contaminate your recycling. So that's been from my experience, some of the trying to get people to adjust, also to change their mindset on that recycling is so permanent in the way that it's done, but it can change, and we have to adjust that messaging so that we can have good recycling. So I always remind some residents, like, you know, right now this is what it is, but if we change anything, make sure you check on our website every year, just in case there might be some changes, and that way you can do recycling at its best.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we probably see what anybody else who gets at events, we have those people who come up, and I think Edgar, he was at an event earlier this morning and somebody actually told him, I don't recycle, it's just all garbage. So we get
Don't you love that? I love when people tell me that. It's like, oh, we're going to talk for hours.
Right. And I actually do love it because it gives you that opportunity to change their mind with all the information that you have. So we definitely see those negative things. And I think overall we get a really positive message from our city residents. And so it makes us excited to go to events.
So the big question, did you convert them over, Edgar? Are they now?
I held them for a bit, not held them, but so this is where that interpreting part comes in. And I really had a great conversation with her afterwards. I asked her, why is it that you don't recycle? And she was very honest about it. She just said, it's all trash. But then we went back to the origins, like, of recycling and why it's done in the first place. We talked about animals, we talked about nature, we talked about resources. So all of those little reminders, kind of like going back to school for a little bit, made her realize, oh, okay, I get it. All right. So it did make a difference.
That's great. And you know, one thing, me personally, when I run into some folks who tell me they don't recycle because they think it all goes in the trash, or they just can't do it, they don't have the time. I always just have, you know, one ask, like, if you can just try to get 5 items in there a week, or, you know, start small, and try to convert them into the behavior. So
Anything's better than nothing.
Love hearing that. We have another question about clear streams versus carts at events. Have you seen that if there's more contamination in one at events than the other? Is there like a better system that you found works?
Oh, we use Clearstream bins at most of our events. The 95-gallon carts that we have are really only offered at really large events. I think Gasparilla Music Festival is one of them. And the Clearstreams are pretty easy. They're easy to transport. That's one of the biggest things, is transporting them. So much easier with the Clearstreams. They're foldable, they're quick. And you can see what's inside of them without doing any work. So the carts are definitely harder in that perspective, but we know right away with the clear stream if that recycling is actually quality or if it's just pretty much trash. And we might have a little more to add.
But I think the quality in recycling doesn't change by the receptacle. It's really the event, the way the event is organized and the vendors and the waste that is created. It's been kind of even from carts to the clear streams.
Okay. And we have some folks too wondering, and I think you may have mentioned this, when you go to events, do you put your those great giveaways that you have, are they like front and center on the table to attract people over, or how does that work?
I guess I did forget to mention this, but this is something that we follow really heavily, is we do not put just everything that we brought on the table. We don't put out 25 cups, 30 cups, whatever the case may be. We put out one example of each. So that's also our way to make sure that when people say, hey, can I have one of those? We say, yes, of course, but talk to us first, because you're going to walk away with some type of knowledge, hopefully, that you didn't have before. So we'll put an example out of each one. And that also helps us because we're able to really interact with these people rather than people just swinging by, grabbing these items and leaving. We know how many people we've really interacted with.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so true how many times I've been to events and I've seen that they're just kind of become grab fests, right. And there's a lot of stuff out on people's tables and people are just walking by and grabbing it, and the intention is really missed. So that's great.
Alita, we have one more question asking about whether or not they require food vendors to provide only recyclable or compostable service materials.
We are not at that point yet for city events. That's something that we hope to have more of a grasp on in the future. We're still kind of working towards getting them to do a little more low waste things. And you know, if you force compostable things on there and they're not having compost as a separate option, it's still, you know, better than single-use plastic, of course, but we kind of we're working our way there. So we're not there completely yet, but it's something we're definitely thinking about.
But yeah, for the event, like Asperla Music Festival that did have composting, they were very strict on what the vendors could bring that was true compostable instead of coated. So they did provide those requirements.
So it's up to the vendors at this point.
Yeah, and that's so key, right? Is, you know, something is only compostable if it is actually going to be composted. So a great point there. And just want to say again, we will share, you know, the prices for all of the promo items. City of Tampa, they're going to share that with everyone after the webinar. We can put that together and actually send that out to the attendees, or we will post it on the webinar Wednesday page for folks to see those prices. And so there's also contact information here for both Shelby and Edgar, and the webinars are recorded, so you will be able to find that contact information and reach out to them. Is it also available on your webpage, Shelby? Edgar? Yeah, okay. So they can go right to the City of Tampa recycling page.
You can go to www.tampagov.net/recycle.
Oh, that's a good easy one, and they can find your contact information there.
Yeah.
Awesome. All the way at the bottom. Scroll down.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. I go to so many pages sometimes and I can't ever find how to reach someone. So it's really great to have it right there available for you all. Now, before we are running low on time, we have just a few moments left together, but I do want to share a couple of great tidbits that were sent in to me in advance of this webinar. And what you are looking at here is a awesome table setup and a game that Laura McCoy from a city of High Point, North Carolina put together. And it sounds like Laura kind of had an awakening as she was going out to events herself. And, you know, she said she found that when she started to add elements for folks to interact with, whether it was reading them or touching something, that they started to actually, one, talk to her on a more personal level, and it allowed her to get information to folks that would maybe be a little shy or also not have a strong English speaking capability. So this is a great way to do it. And you can see her beautiful table setup, and also this really great, what she was calling kind of a interactive self-guided flip-through game that teaches folks along the way about their waste habits. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, Laura. And this is another really innovative game that was put together by Nicholas Reicius. He is in Scott County, Minnesota. Nick, are you on? If you're on the webinar today, if you would just go ahead and pop in the chat box and let me know. Okay, I do not see him on. But anyways, this is a really cool game. You can see he took what he had and made this happen. So the lids are what people would see when they're actually putting items either in the organics or in recycling or in the trash. But he turned it into a game with bean bags that are actually available for folks to throw right into the... Hang on one sec. I think we might actually have, yay, Nick, you are on. Okay, awesome. All right, I'm trying to let you speak there, Nick, but apparently that was not working out for me. So apologies on that, but hopefully I'm covering everything for you best as possible. And we are at getting close to time, but I'm just gonna go ahead and get this back up. And here we are. All right. Sorry about that, folks. So yes, thank you so much for joining, Nick. And if you do have anything you want to add about this game, if you could just go ahead and type that right into the chat box, that would be awesome. And I'll be happy to let folks know about it. I just want to, now that we have this back up, look a little closer at these bean bags. They are so cool. It looks like you actually had these made and had the graphics printed right onto them. So that is something really neat. I actually have never seen that before. I'm sure folks would love for you to share with them how exactly you got that done. You know what, Nick? Actually, can you try talking now?
Yep, but can you hear me?
Yay! Oh my gosh, it worked. Sorry, folks. So yeah, how did you get those beanbag printed? Those are so...
I just went online and found a custom beanbag company that makes like beanbags for your favorite college or sports team. And I gave them, I picked out, the 12 images, just 4 recycling, 4 organics, and 4 trash items. And then they custom printed them and sewed them up for us. So they were a little expensive because they're setup fee for each image. So we've got a little bit invested in the game, but the boards itself were pretty inexpensive.
And what is that you have the lids adhered to? Is that like a cardboard box that you have?
No, it's just, we made it just like a 2-foot by 4-foot beanbag board. So it's plywood with 2x4s. And then they're screwed to the top. But instead of making the beanbag board the long way, we put it sideways. So you can see in the picture where it's under the tent there, it's got legs and back. And then we just, so inexpensive idea for education and outreach for our program here in Scott County, Minnesota. We're one of the Twin Cities metro counties. We've got a couple suburbs, but we're still mostly rural. So this is a county fair. We've got some libraries borrow it from us. We use it internally and externally. So
that's great. So not only is it going out with you to events, but it's going out with your other city internal partners who are bringing it to events, and it's pretty self-explanatory, so I imagine they can use it relatively easily.
Yep, and I think the kids love it, so.
I bet everyone walking up wants to give it a toss. Now, was there any specific like reasoning why you selected the certain items that you did for your bean bags?
Well, the red Solo cup, you know, we get a lot of people that throw it in the recycling up here, but we want to see them in the trash. So we picked that. The motor oil bottle, I think, is a 2, so it wasn't, we want to see those in the trash. So just some things to make people think when they're looking at it. You know, if it was a number 2 plastic bottle here in Minnesota that didn't contain motor oil, we'd say recycle it, but because it had motor oil in it, we're telling people to throw it in the trash. So just some things to make people think. But
yeah, that's so cool. I love the reasoning behind that, and it probably really ignites conversation with folks about those items. So thank you so much for sharing, Nick. And I will share with you that you are Kristen I think Lagana. You are her hero. So I just want to let you know that. And on that note, we are at time. Thank you everyone to joining today for this webinar. Thank you so much, Shelby, Edgar. It has been such a pleasure to come here and visit City of Tampa. And I look forward to hearing more about all the great work that you guys are doing here. So we will be following up with information about those promo items. Again, it'll either come to you through email or on our Webinar Wednesdays page. And thank you all for taking your lunch break and spending it with us. Hopefully you got to eat something yummy while we were over here blabbing away. And have a great rest of your Wednesday and wonderful week ahead.